Are you searching for the best anytime touchdown props for week 6 of the NFL season? I've got just what you need on this week's episode of the IDP Plus Touchdown Props podcast. Welcome back to week 6 of the IDP Plus Anytime Touchdown Props podcast, where each week I've been giving you guys a series of plays for your anytime touchdown parlays or props for each week of the NFL season. This week, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I've been putting alternates in the comments, but instead I'm just going to actually center this show more around a larger group of people. In hopes that maybe you guys can actually take this as like a buffet and kind of mix and match players and matchups that you like and make your own little parlay. So I'm going to call this the parlay buffet going forward. So I'm actually going to start it off I'm going to break it up into two parts here. The first part is going to be what I call anchor plays, guys that we feel extremely confident about, that have great matchups, but have probably lower payouts, right? And then we're going to get into a series of guys that I'm going to call the odd stretchers, the ones that are going to bump up the payout of your parlays. Guys more closer to plus money or even plus money. So let's go ahead and dive into it. I'm going to be a little more concise with my research, but I just want to kind of reiterate to everybody that I'm just doing the research here. That's kind of the goal, is to do the research for you guys and tell you what I've found and see if maybe we can exploit some matchups and bring home a little extra cash this week. But again, this is let's all just remember that we don't want to overspend. We want to, we want to bet within our budget, and we don't want to overdo things. So I've just done the research. I'm giving you guys the information that I've found. Take this little buffet of props and, piece together the ones that you like. Let me know if any hit, throw them in the comments. Let's just try to have some fun this week. So we'll go ahead and start off here with the anchor plays. We're going to start off with Derrick Henry. He was at minus 255 against Washington this week. I anticipate that to come up a little bit to more like minus 200. Last week, he started at like minus 350, and it bumped up pretty quick by the end of the day. So just kind of keep an eye on that. But Derrick Henry is one of those guys that can get a touchdown any given week. And with his red zone usage, he's the first one that's going to get a touchdown on any opportunity to get in the red zone. So a plus matchup only solidifies this as he goes up against the Washington Commanders, who are a top 5 matchup for wide receivers and running backs. So Derrick Henry at minus 255 is a good start for us. Next one here is Saquon Barkley at minus 190. I anticipate some of these that are pretty close to minus 200 to kind of jump up a little bit, give us a little better odds closer to game time. He goes up against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland has been surprisingly generous overall this season in terms of just production allowed to opposing offenses. They've kept just one team under 20 points so far this season, and that was a struggling Jags team in, I think, this week 2 or 3. So they were still struggling pretty heavily. You didn't see them pick up the game flow yet. So Philadelphia should be in for at least a couple of touchdowns in this one. So I would say they could easily hit this 20-point minimum, and in doing so, I'd imagine you're going to score at least 2 touchdowns. So Saquon ought to be one of the first ones to get a crack at it. And he is second in the league in terms of running backs getting red zone touches, with 18 red zone touches. And I believe he's got 4 touchdowns. So Saquon's going to be the likely candidate to get it. We all thought that maybe the tush push would kind of snipe some of his touches, but it seems like they're really leaning on him. So I like Saquon at minus 190. Josh Jacobs comes in next at minus 155 against Arizona at home. Jacobs finally found pay dirt in week 5. This should be just the tip of the iceberg, I imagine. Now that he's feeling more comfortable and found the end zone, I anticipate he kind of gets back to his roots of years past, where he just really finds the end zone up close. And like I say, he's really got momentum. I think he's going to really gain steam off of last week, and he's seen 14 carries inside the 20 this season. That's among the top 10 running backs throughout the league. And he's team leading in targets in the red zone or touches. And Arizona's given up over 100 yards per game on the ground and 5 touchdowns to go with it in their games against opposing offenses. So Josh Jacobs should be in for a big day. Our next one here is David Montgomery at -145 against the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys are this is kind of a tricky matchup because the Cowboys started off the season pretty awful against running backs. They allowed Kamara to go off for like 4 or 5 touchdowns, and they were just allowing crazy yardage early on. Well, they've since clamped down. The last couple of weeks, I don't imagine they've allowed over 100 rushing yards total. So just be wary with this one. The reason I picked David Montgomery is because the guy, he's got just 4 games since week 1 of last season where he hasn't scored a touchdown. And there's few teams in the NFL that can actually stop the Detroit Lions rushing attack. So I really like David Montgomery to get one in. If they can get close, David Montgomery's getting a touchdown. And matter of fact, oftentimes this Detroit offense will find a way to get both of their running backs a touchdown. So you might think about a Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown as well. I'd say the odds are quite a bit greater than David Montgomery. Next, we have Jamar Chase at -130 against the New York Giants. Time of possession, disclaimer on this one that New York can really hog the football, especially if they know they're playing against a high-powered offense. You saw it against Dallas where they just ate the clock all game long and just kept the game close. That's my disclaimer with this one, is if New York just controls the clock, Cincinnati may not get many opportunities to score. But if they do, Jamar Chase is likely to be one of the top candidates to get a target in the red zone. And other than the disclaimer of the fact that New York can hog the ball and time of possession, this matchup is a positive for Jamar Chase, as New York has allowed 6 wide receiver touchdowns this season, and Chase now has 5 in the last 3 weeks. He's really turned into the red zone go-to guy for Joe Burrow now that this offense is kind of finally starting to click and come together. That's going to be it for our anchor plays this week. Now let's get into some plus odds, some plus money here, and try to get into our odd stretchers, the ones that are really going to help your payouts. So the way I kind of like to do my parlays is I'll kind of start off with maybe an anchor or 2 and then throw in like an odd stretcher or 2. I'll do a series of parlays and just kind of mix and match whatever you like with, play some more confident ones that have a little less payout, but then also throw, a little bit less money on some ones that have a little more payout. So just whatever you feel comfortable, have a little fun with this. We got plenty of options. So we'll get into our odd stretchers. First one here is DJ Moore +135 against Jacksonville. DJ Moore is among the top 10 most targeted wide receivers in the red zone this season with 7 targets. He's hauled in 3 of those for scores. Now, last week he had 2. So a little bit skewed just because of last week, but the Bears offense is really humming, and with a home matchup against the Jags defense that's allowed over 1,000 yards to wide receivers and 6 touchdowns so far this season in 5 weeks, I think Moore has a great chance to continue. Granted that this Chicago offense can keep things rolling, and Caleb Williams looks a lot more comfortable, so I anticipate DJ Moore to be targeted early and often, especially in the red zone. And that was, again, +135. Our next one here is Brian Robinson at +130. He's going up against the Baltimore Ravens. And, there's a little bit we can exploit here because the Baltimore defense has been very good at limiting big gains via the run this season. They've allowed probably some of the fewest yards on the ground to opposing offenses. But on the flip side, they've also allowed running backs to score 4 times so far. So, take their good rush defense with a little bit of a grain of salt because they are allowing guys to punch in when they get close. So I don't anticipate Robinson has a huge game, but his 14 carries in the red zone and 5 touchdowns certainly is promising considering the touchdowns allowed by the Ravens. And Washington really likes Robinson when they get in close. They really trust him inside the red zone. Again, that one actually was +130. That's kind of better odds than we've seen on him recently. Next one here is going to be in the same game. I tend to not stick to 2. I tend to not advocate for choosing 2 guys on the same team to score, because if a team only scores 2 or 3 touchdowns and you're trying to bet on the guys that get 2 of those 3, your odds, it's extremely hard because inevitably there's always a third wide receiver 3 that catches one and screws everything up. So I urge you, if you're looking at either or both of these plays for Robinson and McLaurin in the Baltimore game, I would warily go with one or the other. But Terry McLaurin comes in at +135 against the Baltimore Ravens, who actually present a top 3 matchup for opposing wide receivers. So like I was saying, don't overdo it. We don't want to put too many eggs in the same basket. But again, the Ravens have allowed nearly 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns to wide receivers this season in 5 weeks. So they've allowed several multiple touchdown games to opposing wide receivers. And Washington has scored more points than any other team in the league so far. So I anticipate this to be a high-scoring matchup. I don't see – I see maybe Washington probably having their a little bit of a wake-up call, but I still think they keep this game close. Jaden Daniels has been outstanding, and I think they find ways to get it done week in and week out, regardless of matchup. So there should be a big opportunity for Washington to still to kind of keep the wheels turning here. So next one here, we've got James Conner coming in at -110. Odds are a little bit lower here, but if you play it right, he can still kind of help you out with some odds, and I feel really good about this. I was borderline putting him as an anchor, but the odds are a little bit closer to 100 than the rest. So, but James Conner has 3 touchdowns on 16 red zone touches this season, and those 16 touches are good for 4th most among the league's running backs. Green Bay is mediocre against the run. They've allowed 4 running back touchdowns so far, and Conner has 2 touchdowns on 3 carries inside the 5. If they get close, it's James Conner's touchdown. So I really like that play against Green Bay this week at -110. Drake London comes in here next against a Carolina defense at +120 for an anytime touchdown. London has 6 catches on 7 targets with 3 touchdowns so far this season, and Carolina has leaked production all year long, all over. Running backs, wide receivers, you name it. They've allowed the second most touchdowns to wide receivers at 8 touchdowns. They've allowed 4 in the last 2 games, and London will likely get first crack at a receiving touchdown this week. But Mooney is also an intriguing play, a sleeper play with +145 odds to really help boost payouts if you want to dabble into that a little bit. Next, we've got Diontae Johnson at +145. I've kind of been riding this, especially since Carolina's got a new quarterback, one that's confident, can throw touchdowns here, and particularly likes Diontae Johnson. He goes up against the Atlanta Falcons, who are an up and down secondary. They've allowed 6 wide receiver touchdowns on the season, 3 last week to Tampa Bay, 2 3 weeks ago to Kansas City. And Diontae now has 10 red zone targets in the last 3 weeks with Andy Dalton under center, and he has 2 touchdowns as a result. So the red zone usage is definitely there. He's by far and away the most favorited and highly targeted wide receiver of this group in the red zone, and Carolina's struggled to stay in the game last week against Chicago. So that's why you saw maybe Diontae not really find the end zone or even get many red zone targets. I think he just got 1, but this game was over by the 3rd quarter. So they were kind of struggling. They couldn't really get anything done, and Chicago's got a pretty formidable defense. So we'll chalk that one up as a mulligan, and we'll look to get back on track here with Diontae at +145 this week. Marvin Harrison comes in next at +100 this week. He goes up against the Green Bay Packers. Again, disclaimer, if I put more than one on the same team, I really don't recommend putting both in a parlay. You can if you're into the same game parlays or anything like that, but like I say, it's just a lot harder to bet on multiple scores for the same team in the same game. So I just really like the matchups for both of these guys, and James Conner's red zone usage is great, but Marvin Harrison also has a little bit better payout, and there's potential against a suspect Packers secondary that both of these guys could score. Again, I'd probably just do one or the other in your parlays. So the Packers, the matchup here, the Packers really haven't played that well against competent quarterbacks. I think they are among the league leaders in interceptions, but they've also played awful competition for I think 2 or 3 of the weeks so far. They've allowed for multiple wide receiver touchdowns to teams like the Eagles and Vikings, and they even let Will Levis get 2 touchdowns in week 3. So I think Kyler Murray should be firing on all cylinders, and Arizona should be able to bounce back. Actually, last week they beat the 49ers, so I think they ought to be able to continue their momentum this week in a fairly promising matchup that actually has pretty good odds to be kind of a shootout here with how the Green Bay offense operates and the amount of points that they're scoring as well. So Harrison's elite ability gives him a great chance to blow by the Green Bay Packers secondary and keep this Arizona offense in this game this week. That's going to do it for our odd stretchers. I've got some honorable mentions here. I'll just kind of throw out and be real concise with other guys I was kind of looking at, but didn't quite feel great about, but they have opportunities. The Atlanta Falcons running backs play Carolina. Carolina is awful against the run game. They've allowed a touchdown in like the last 25 games. You might, if you want to play that game of guessing if Bijan's actually going to show up and punch one in, or if Algier might sneak one and snipe Bijan, that might be something to sprinkle in. I feel confident that one of them's going to get a touchdown, but which one, I wasn't confident enough to play it. So just kind of want to throw that matchup out there. And then also the Chicago running backs versus Jacksonville. Swift and Johnson both come in at plus money. Jacksonville's allowed 6 running back touchdowns, and they don't have Foye Oluokun now. So Chicago running backs have been, along with the rest of this offense, firing on all cylinders. They both have a touchdown in each of the last 2 weeks. Roshan often gets the first chance. So just something to kind of think about. Also, next we've got Nico Collins is out. I think this feels like a good chance for Tank Dell to maybe slip some coverage. He hasn't been quite as effective so far this season just because of the volume has gone elsewhere. But with Nico out and on IR, I anticipate Dell. I feel like this is a great game for Dell to sneak by some coverage in the secondary to break off a long touchdown. He has that capability, and I think with Nico out, he's going to be looking at a lot more targets. So we've got a chance there. His anytime touchdown odds were plus 200. Just kind of something to think about, because I imagine that New England will be focused on Stephon Diggs and limiting his big plays. But last year we've got technically the Baltimore Ravens pass catchers, wide receivers namely, have a great matchup this week against the Commanders. I don't trust any of them, honestly. Bateman seems to be the favored wide receiver in terms of touchdowns. I think he's got 2. Likely would kind of be a guy I would think about, but just depends on who's guarding him, because Washington has pretty good defenders in the passing game whenever you're talking about defending tight ends. So likely he's kind of a wide receiver tight end mix. There's opportunity there. I anticipate that Lamar Jackson will throw for a couple of touchdowns. It just presents too good of a passing matchup. So, but I wasn't going to play that game of which one, because frankly, it should be Flowers, but it's not always. It's only happened once this season. So just wanted to throw the matchup out there, though. So I know we went a little long this week. There's a lot more information, but I wanted to give you guys this in the form of, like I say, it's like a buffet parlay style. So take some of the odd stretchers, mix them in with some of the anchor plays, and come up with some 2, 3, 4 leg parlays that give some payouts that you guys like. If you come away with any money this week, let me know in the comments. Let's have some fun. I'll be placing some money on a number of these guys in several parlays this week. So again, these are just, I've done all the research. I'm giving you guys the information that I've found. So do with this information what you like. Be responsible, don't overdo things, and let's see if we can come out of week 6 with some extra cash. So good luck everybody in week 6, and hopefully we can hit some anytime touchdown parlays. See you next week.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.